Let's say you just clocked into work and find a company-wide email waiting in your inbox. Turns out Dan, the new IT hire, was terminated overnight because, well, Dan is a North Korean hacker. You're thinking to yourself, what the f? And decide to do some sleuthing to find out how this could have ever happened. Meanwhile, your company is freaking the f out and deep into an internal investigation in hopes to find out what Dan could have possibly taken.
Hey, we have a problem.
This didn't happen to us, but what you just saw is based on a true story. It's even happened to a cybersecurity company that this guy works at.
They applied, they were interviewed twice, found to be perfect for the job.
North Korean hackers have conned over 300 companies and dozens of them in the Fortune 500. And cases that we know of show these attacks are becoming much more prevalent and sophisticated.
One of them, they actually controlled the security secrets on a critical infrastructure for the United States.
And just within the past 2 years, the FBI, NSA, and the US Department of State issued an advisory on these cyber attacks.
The North Korean government has dispatched thousands of their IT workers.
I've talked to some companies that said that over 50% of the resumes that they're considering were North Korean fake employees.
By posing as a legitimate employee, many are raking in six-figure salaries. In fact, it's estimated that these North Korean hackers are making $300 million a year, making it a major revenue stream for North Korea's military and nuclear regime. Let's get into how North Korean hackers are fooling some of the biggest American companies. Why do you think that this has become such a growing issue and problem?
Number one, it's illegal in most countries to hire a fake North Korean employee. Number two, they're taking real jobs. And number three, they could not only compromise your company, but compromise your intellectual property.
That's Roger. He's a data-driven defense evangelist who works for a company that provides one of the world's largest security awareness training and simulated phishing platforms. Ironically, KnowBe4 hired a North Korean to join as a remote principal software engineer last summer. So what did he say that his name was?
Kyle something. We don't like to share the last name of this person because it's a real US citizen that apparently was taken advantage of.
This was the photo Kyle provided on his application. I read that there were 4 video calls. How did he even get past that?
In this case, the person that was on those calls looked somewhat similar to the person they were pretending to be.
Kyle, in this case, used this stock photo and used an AI tool to make it look closer to who appeared on these video calls. And this was the resume Kyle used to apply for the job. And when we look at his skills, his experience, the language, all of it, it seems pretty convincing to me. Which makes me question how Kyle got away with making such bold claims.
They're only using voice over IP phone numbers for not only themselves, but for any of the references.
It was a pleasure working with Dan.
They're claiming to have worked for, big companies like Microsoft and Google, but they're mentioning non-existent locations.
These hackers also use publicly available information from professionals like you and me to help make themselves look believable. LinkedIn is a good example of this. Some use it to fabricate their images, and others like Kyle create their resumes by stitching together pieces from real professionals who work in those fields. This is all incredibly interesting, because when we think of North Korea, we generally associate it as an isolationist country that's always been technologically behind. But within just the past 2 decades, we've seen its hackers sharpen their techniques. Back in the 2000s, these hackers were really only limited to simple tools and malware, and focused their efforts on DDoS attacks. They only caused temporary disruptions, and we saw these attacks more as a nuisance than a threat. Then, we saw them get a little bit more serious. They started to use complex techniques like tailored malware, financial system manipulation, and social engineering to target companies like Sony. Remember, in this era, North Korean hackers were also attacking banks and cryptocurrency exchanges, and these efforts, if successful, proved to be lucrative. So around 2020, the country doubled down on targeting crypto and started using ransomware campaigns for financial extortion and global disruption. We found that the massive amounts of stolen funds were then used to fund North Korea's nuclear arms and missiles. And as we've seen a rise in remote jobs the past few years, thousands of North Korean hackers took note and basically said, you guys, we can probably be making more money landing these jobs. Hello, steady income. Right, Supreme Leader?
In the majority of the cases, they're just trying to get paid. There's a person quoted saying that I talked to these 2 fake North Korean employees every day, and they were great employees, and I wish I still had them, except for the fact that they were fake North Korean employees.
Initially, they applied to jobs that were mostly in crypto, not only because they could get paid in crypto, but also because it gave them chances to break in and steal a whole bunch of it. Then we saw them expand and start targeting more tech and cybersecurity companies.
Those industries tend to have more high-paid, very technical developers that work fully remote.
And that's what our guy Kyle did. Roger didn't share how much Kyle was set to make, but this can give us a general idea. Before we get into how Kyle was able to infiltrate KnowBe4, I want to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Incogni. It's a data removal service that gets rid of your personal information from public websites and private databases on your behalf, making it more difficult for companies and cybercriminals to find. If you were to do this yourself, it could take over 130 hours to send just one round of removal requests to the data brokers Incogni covers. So if you're tired of getting spam text messages and emails, or worried about becoming a victim of online fraud, Incogni can help. It's already completed over 30 million data removals. You can find more information and click the link to the website in the video description. All right, let's get back into it. So in hindsight, were there any red flags?
So they actually submitted IDs using AI-enabled images that was kind of a blend between what they look like.
So Kyle was able to get through KnowBe4's background checks and all standard pre-hiring checks.
It was sophisticated enough that they had the front of the ID and the back of the ID.
And Kyle couldn't have done this alone. He needed others to help him fool the company. He and many like him are actually just one part of this criminal ecosystem. North Korea will send its trained hackers to countries like China and Russia because they have far better access to information.
The group will live in the same kind of a dormitory, and they go to work in a common place.
And they've come up with a few ways to look like they're US citizens.
There's an entire subculture industry where they can go out and buy 100 IDs at a time for, $15 a pop or something like that.
In other cases, Roger said that the North Koreans are actually paying real US citizens to use their IDs to get hired. Now, let's get back to Kyle. Once he got hired at KnowBe4, the next order of business was getting the work laptop.
This person said, hey, I need you to ship this laptop to somewhere else. He made up an excuse that he was visiting his girlfriend's sick mother, and so he didn't think anything of it.
This is where another partner in crime comes in. Let's call him Kyle 2.0. About 2.5 weeks after Kyle 1.0 was hired, this Kyle received the laptop in a completely different state from where Kyle claimed he lived. Guys like Kyle 2.0 are what many people call laptop farmers. They'll set up company equipment in their laptop farms so that guys like Kyle 1.0 can remotely access the computer and look like they're logging in from the United States. In KnowBe4's case, the farmer set up the company laptop at 9:55 p.m. and immediately got busy.
As far as we can tell, it appeared as if the laptop farmer was the one that was trying to do the malicious activities, and we don't know why. We think they may have been also trying to take advantage of the situation.
Kyle 2.0 then tried, and failed multiple times, to install password-stealing malware and manipulate session history logs. At first, they tried to download the malware from a USB device, and when that failed, they tried to do the same thing using a server located on their local network.
More than likely, the North Korean employee wouldn't want them to do the maliciousness. I mean, it made them lose the position very quickly.
KnowBe4 was immediately alerted, and its SOC asked Kyle to huddle on Slack to ask what the f was going on. But whoever was on the other side declined, making up excuses that didn't really make sense. Ultimately, the company made the decision to lock down the laptop.
What is this?
Just 25 minutes from when it was first powered on. KnowBe4 reported the incident to the FBI and invited Google's Mandiant, a cybersecurity firm, to get involved in its investigation. Mandiant identified Kyle as a fake North Korean employee because he used the same ID for multiple job applications. It should be worth noting that this particular attempt was a failure, relatively speaking. The whole thing is strange, but for me, what I found most surprising was what happened after Kyle was terminated. When asked to send back the company laptop, this was his response.
And the person said, what address, should you ship the box to? And they actually returned the laptop.
Roger said the likely reason is because the perpetrators don't want to risk getting into more trouble over stolen equipment should they get caught. And with the return box, Roger said he got a yellow sticky note with the company name written out on it
to remind him which laptop, belongs to which company.
This scale is just another example that proves how this is a growing concern. These networks have become more intricate because everyone involved gets some cut of the money. Take this other case. From the outskirts of Phoenix, a woman named Christina aided 3 North Koreans by receiving paychecks on their behalf. Another accomplice, a Ukrainian national, helped Christina compromise over 60 IDs of American citizens, launder money, and commit tax fraud under the names of 35 Americans. Overall, the conspiracy impacted more than 300 companies, and their efforts generated at least $6.8 million in revenue. And while most of the money goes back to benefit North Korea's regime, even for the hacker who may just get 10% of the 6-figure job, it's still a huge amount of money they otherwise wouldn't be able to make. But like anything that comes with a high reward, there's a high risk. If a North Korean imposter employee doesn't meet quota, they'll likely be sent back home. If our girl Christina is convicted, she's looking at a maximum penalty of 97.5 years in prison. In another case, a man was charged for running a laptop farm from his Nashville home. He's facing up to 20 years in prison. However, North Korean hackers have largely been elusive. KnowBe4 still doesn't know who they really hired, but it's fortunate that it was able to take swift action. Had they not, Roger believes that they could have been after the company's data. In more serious cases, they've stolen companies' private data for ransom, others stole employee passwords for hostile motives. The fact is, the possibilities are far and wide.
The trends that I've seen, data exfiltration, threats to disrupt the business, ransomware, and also spreading outside of America to other English-speaking countries.
And kudos to the company for sharing its experience to the public.
Most of these companies did not call the FBI. I'm not going to leak their names or anything, but it did seem to me it certainly would have been embarrassing and sometimes concerning.
So based off of everything that you've shared, it seems to me that it doesn't just impact companies. Cases like this impact pretty much any American.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. Imagine if you're the real Kyle going for a job one day and your background check's going to reveal that you were in all of these fake ID jobs. That's bound to be tough to explain to employers.
So if it still isn't clear, at the very least, these hackers could lessen your chances of getting hired at your next job, and at the very worst, you could unknowingly be helping bolster up a communist active military with your personal info online. Cool.